The show opens with a handsome chef named Ling on his way to a blind date. His friend calls him and teases him about going on a blind date with someone who has a PhD, but Ling just hangs up on him. Elsewhere, we see his blind date Yufei staring at a woman in front of her, confused why this woman is here. The woman's a famous actress named Jen, who's obsessed with Ling. She insinuates that Ling and Yufei are incompatible and suggests she leave before he arrives. However, our heroine says that she's capable of making that decision for herself. She then advises Jen to stop obsessing over him, as he clearly isn't into her. At that moment, Ling arrives and agrees with Yufei. He then scolds Jen for interfering in his personal life and following him to every event. Afterward, he turns to Yufei and says he actually isn't interested in her and only showed up to the date under pressure from his parents. He claims that they are indeed incompatible and turns to leave. Just then, she receives a call from her company director who asks her how the date is going. She's been set up on this date because Ling belongs to a wealthy family that owns Chunhee Group. Yufei's research institute needs funding from the group, so she's been thrown into this situation. Back on track with her mission again, Yufei catches up to Ling and tries to convince him that they are somewhat compatible, including their astrological sign and blood type. But he's unconvinced and he shows no interest in her. She then tries to stop him again when he walks away, but mistakenly knocks over a bottle of wine, which shatters. When Ling tries to help her, he falls on the glass and injures himself. Yunfei immediately rushes him to the hospital, where he gets all fixed up. Shortly after, Ling calls a friend to pick him up, but they claim to be busy. So he reluctantly asks Yufei to bring him home, and she's happy to oblige. Later, the two arrive at his home, and she mentions that she has something important to show him. Now, she just wants to show him the USB drive containing her research project, but he mistakenly believes she's trying to undress, and he tells her that he's not that type of person. Unfortunately, he kicks her out of the house before she can explain. The next day, her director asks about the date, but Yufei explains it was a disaster. She thinks she's completely blown any chance of ever having a future meeting. But right at that moment, she receives a text from Ling who wants to meet. This excites Yufei, and she immediately agrees. In a flashback, we see Ling with his mother, who's pressuring him to talk to Yufei. She wants him to find a decent partner, as he's always getting involved with scandalous women. He tries to refuse, but she warns him that she won't support his restaurant if he doesn't comply. The next day, Ling takes Yufei to his restaurant and claims that he's reserved the whole place just for her. However, she knows the restaurant has been closed due to scandals. He asks her how she found out, and Yufei explains that she did some research on him. For the meal, he tries to turn her off by serving her pickles, which is the cheapest option on the restaurant's menu. But his plan backfires spectacularly, as pickles turn out to be her favorite. Later, as their date comes to an end, they both realize that they once again failed to achieve their goals. Yufei failed to talk about her project, while Ling couldn't shake her interest in him. Days later, while working overtime, Yufei senses someone watching her. Assuming it's a pervert, she tries to hit the person, but he turns out to be her senior colleague, John. Our heroine is overjoyed that he has returned to the country after such a long time. Later during dinner, he mentions overhearing about her date with Ling for their project. He asks if she likes him, but Yufei denies it, making him feel relieved. The following day, the two are at another restaurant discussing work. Just then, Ling calls her and asks to meet, but she says she's with her senior colleague and hangs up. This makes our hero jealous, so he finds out her location from her friend and shows up. During the meal, he tries to brag about himself, but they ignore him and keep talking about work. Ling then flaunts his wealth by ordering the most expensive dishes. But when it's time to settle the bill, he realizes he forgot his wallet. The waiters accuse him of dining and dashing, and the security staff restrain him. Seeing this, John offers to pay the bill, but Ling refuses, as his pride won't allow it. He instead calls a friend, who urgently arrives there and settles the matter. Before leaving, Ling asks Yufei to meet him on the weekend and promises to make her favorite dish. Outside, his friend reminds him that he has a cooking show over the weekend and advises him to reschedule the date with Yufei. However, Ling considers that this is the perfect chance to get revenge on her for today's humiliation. The scene then cuts to the weekend where he attends his cooking show via live stream. He soon discovers that his special guest is Jen, which irritates him. Even Yufei is upset to see them together. Moments later, Ling decides to embarrass her and invites her to try his pig trotters. Our heroine is hesitant, but since it's a live feed, she can't deny him for long and goes to the stage. He hopes she'll be nervous and make a fool of herself on camera, but to his disappointment, she speaks confidently without any signs of stage fright. After the show ends, Yufei confronts Ling, saying he deliberately wanted to embarrass her in front of everyone. He tries to convince her that his intentions were good, but she only shouts at him. She then tells him not to contact her again, as she doesn't want to be involved with someone as childish as him. Meanwhile, in a dressing room, Jen is furious because Ling is not reciprocating her feelings and seems close to Yufei. Right at that moment, her childhood friend Fong arrives. He seems to be in love with her as he's brought her flowers and gifts. However, this annoys the bitch, and she demands that he leave her alone. The next day at work, the director asks Yufei about her progress with Ling. She speaks honestly and says that the relationship is over, but this only enrages the boss. He starts shouting at her, saying that their company is in desperate need of investment. Fortunately, John arrives at the scene and diffuses the tension between the two. Meanwhile, Ling's parents learn about what happened and get mad at him. They warn him that if he doesn't patch up things with Yufei, they won't help him pay for the restaurant. Our frustrated hero then tries to text her, but realizes he's been blocked. In the following days, the director continues to pressure Yufei to secure sponsorship. Having no other option, she heads to Ling's house, where she finds him drunk. Our heroine feels bad for him, so she tidies up the place and then goes to the bathroom to freshen up. She also makes his favorite dish and feeds it to him. Ling is touched by her kind gesture, and he wholeheartedly apologizes for his mistakes. He also acknowledges that he's been an absolute prick to her. As the two engage in deeper conversation, Yufei finally reveals the truth about their project and how she met him only for sponsorship. She asks for his help, stating that their institution may shut down without funding. Ling agrees to help her, but in exchange, he wants her to pretend to be his girlfriend. The next day, he brings her to meet his parents, who are thrilled. During their dinner, they're impressed by the well-educated Yufei, especially compared to their son, who often gets into trouble and has achieved very little in his life. However, Yufei defends him, stating that he's very passionate and serious about his cooking. She compliments the quality of his food, leaving his parents speechless. Afterward, Ling thanks Yufei for her help. She claims it's nothing and admits that she didn't lie because she actually likes his cooking. He then reminds her that they have to keep this lie going for at least a month, to which she agrees. A few days later, Ling brings Yufei and her friends to a restaurant. They talk about their lives, play games, and joke around. As they leave, he invites Yufei to a grand reopening of his restaurant, which is happening in a few days. She gladly accepts, and at this moment, she feels her heart racing fast like never before. Elsewhere, Fong meets up with Jen and notices that she's been very upset lately. The reason is simple. Her crush has been ignoring her brutally. Fong is annoyed by the situation because he wants her to like him. But when she pleads for help, he agrees. Later that night, Jen discovers that Fong has asked her assistant for Yufei's address. Fearing that he's going to do something bad, she quickly calls Ling and informs him about the situation. The scene then cuts to Yufei, who is on her way home alone. She senses that someone is following her, so she tries to run, but a masked man suddenly shows up and proceeds to attack her. Fortunately, Ling arrives just in time and pushes her aside. He then engages the man in a fight and eventually unmasks him. However, the latter manages to run away without showing his face. Later at home, Yufei helps treat Ling's wounds, and they discuss who could be behind this attack. At that moment, the doorbell rings, and it turns out to be Jen. She tearfully admits that she had only complained about them in front of Fong and didn't expect things to escalate like this. The revelation infuriates Ling, and he asks why she can't leave him alone. The woman reasons that he makes soup just like her grandma used to make for her. However, he angrily says that this isn't love and she should stop obsessing over him. Fed up by his rejection and words, Jen vows to forget about him before storming off. Lin then offers to stay with Yufei as he fears the psychopath might return at any time. The next morning, he cooks breakfast for her and does all the house chores. When it's time to go to the office, John arrives to pick her up, but the senior becomes upset when he spots Ling in her house. It's evident that he has a crush on her as well. The atmosphere soon becomes tense as the two men stare at each other. But suddenly Ling gets a phone call, prompting him to leave. When he reaches the restaurant, he finds chaos. His friend explains that when he arrived this morning, he discovered the doors open and the place in complete disarray. Soon after, Yufei and her senior also arrive, and she quickly realizes who's responsible for the mess. Meanwhile, Jen goes to see Fong and tearfully reveals that the police are looking for him. He's just happy to see that she cares about him and claims he's willing to go to any length for her. However, she asks him to stop the craziness as he's crossed all lines now. She then manages to convince him to turn himself in. In the afternoon, Jen comes to the restaurant and apologizes to Ling. She makes it clear that she no longer has romantic feelings for him and hopes they can be friends. The two then share a hug to resolve their differences. However, at that moment, Yufei arrives and gets upset to see them together. She turns to leave, but Jen stops her and takes her aside for a chat. The popular actress then admits that she never truly loved Ling. She was just fixated on the idea of him. But now that she's over him, she wants to move abroad and pursue her studies. Our heroine is genuinely happy for her and wishes her all the best. A few days later, Yufei's research facility finally secures the sponsorship, making her very happy. The director is also pleased, and he thanks her for everything. In the next scene, Yufei wakes up in her bed and senses someone's presence in her house. Assuming it's an intruder, she grabs a baseball bat to confront the person, but soon realizes it's Ling. When she asks why he's there, he reveals that she was the one who asked him to come earlier. Turns out our heroine was so tired that she doesn't even remember the interaction. Later, when Ling is preparing food for her, Yufei keeps staring at him. She is so attracted by his charm that she corners him against the wall and surprises him with a kiss. However, our hero is shocked by the sudden kiss and claims that this was his first time. He doesn't know how to react, so he simply grabs his clothes and leaves. After the incident, the two go no contact for a while. One day, Yufei goes to his cooking show to cheer him up, but upon noticing her, he becomes nervous and freezes. After the show ends, Ling goes to look for her, but he only finds his friend. The latter asks if he's in love with Yufei because he's been acting very weird around her. However, our hero strongly denies it. He claims he could never fall in love with someone like her, who is too arrogant and serious. Unfortunately, Yufei arrives at the same time and overhears everything. Ling tries to explain that he was just joking, but she ignores him and walks away. A few days have passed and Yufei's mood still hasn't improved. This is causing her to screw up at work. Seeing her so depressed, John asks what the matter is, and she finally shares the details of what happened with Ling. She believes that she's fallen in love with him because her pulse accelerated when she kissed him. However, he claims it's the body's natural reaction when that happens with any guy she kisses. He suggests that she kiss him to test this theory, but seeing her puzzled, he claims it was a joke. A little while later, Ling comes to see Yufei with a bouquet and apologizes to her. He explains that she caught him off guard with the kiss and he didn't know how to react. To make amends, he invites her out for a bite to eat. Although initially hesitant, Yufei eventually agrees to go with him. As the two leave in his car, John sees them from a distance and becomes upset. Soon, they arrive at the restaurant and Ling thinks he has to impress her. He orders the most expensive food and gifts her a luxury bag. However, the bag is too small and doesn't even fit her phone. Throughout the meal, Ling continues to behave weirdly, which confuses our heroine. She's starting to think that he might have a rare neurological condition. Despite this, he persists and directly asks her to be his real girlfriend. Yufei is shocked by the proposal, but she says she'll think about it. In the following days, they begin to meet more frequently and gradually grow closer. One afternoon, John invites Yufei to his house, claiming he will make her favorite dishes. She doesn't think much about it and agrees. When Ling finds out about this, he becomes so jealous that he shows up to join them. Later, John asks him to go downstairs and collect a delivery package for him. Ling reluctantly leaves, and during this time, John confesses his feelings to Yufei, revealing that he's been in love with her for a very long time and hopes she will give him a chance. However, she immediately rejects him and brutally states that she only sees him as an older brother. The response shatters John, but nonetheless he accepts her decision and hugs her. At this moment, Ling returns with the package and gets upset to see them together. She tries to explain, but he doesn't listen to her and leaves. After this incident, Yufei and Ling again go no contact because neither is willing to reconcile. One day, she receives a call from her friend, alerting her that Ling is about to leave the country. Hearing this, she panics and immediately rushes to the airport. When she finds him, she wastes no time and confesses her feelings. She reveals that she's actually liked him since the first day they met. Ling reciprocates her feelings, and they share a romantic kiss. After their emotional moment, he clarifies that he isn't leaving and that he was simply there picking up a friend from the airport. Later, while the two are kissing, Yufei's parents suddenly arrive and they're shocked. Dad suddenly faints and he's rushed to the hospital. When he wakes up, he asks to meet Ling, but Yufei says that he's already left. She then comes clean and reveals that he's her boyfriend. Hearing this, Dad is disappointed and tells her to prioritize her research before a relationship. The following day, Ling meets with Yufei's parents and her father takes this opportunity to challenge him with very difficult questions. He answers them effortlessly, but Dad is still disappointed when he learns that Ling is just a college graduate. He believes Ling is not suitable for his highly educated daughter. Yufei defends him and compliments his cooking skills, but her stubborn father doesn't care about that. He then asks about complex functions and the periodic table of elements, which Ling obviously can't answer. As a result, their first meeting doesn't go well, leaving him frustrated. However, Yufei assures him that she's an adult and that her dad can't interfere with her life. Days later, her parents eat some sketchy food, after which they get sick and end up in the hospital. Yufei then starts giving them healthy meals prepared by Ling. Surprisingly, they enjoy the food so much that they look forward to each meal and discuss what they should eat every day. One day when the food doesn't arrive, Dad asks for the address of the restaurant. In response, Yufei summons Ling and reveals that he's the one who cooked all the meals that they've been enjoying. Hearing this, Dad is taken aback and regrets treating him so harshly. He then finally entrusts his daughter to Ling, making the couple very happy. A few days later, Ling decides to propose to Yufei, so he bakes some cakes and invites her to taste them. She excitedly eats them all and swallows the ring he had hidden in one of the cakes. Witnessing this, Ling panics and immediately takes her to the hospital. During an X-ray, they locate the ring in her abdomen, but the doctor assures him not to worry and prescribes some medicine to help it pass. Due to this, Yufei's father once again becomes mad at Ling for being unreliable, but she defends him, taking the blame for the incident. Afterward, the couple sees a happy family playing together in the park, and they feel some longing. Ling asks her what kind of wedding she wants, but Yufei says she doesn't want anything fancy and just wants a simple, meaningful wedding. Hearing this, he gets down on one knee and proposes marriage. She complains that there's no engagement ring, so he proudly shows her the X-ray. This makes our heroine burst into laughter, but she gladly accepts the proposal. On their wedding day, Yufei's father asks Ling to take a physics and chemistry test on the spot. However, this time, he remains unfazed and successfully answers all the questions. Soon after, Yufei arrives and eagerly pulls him aside to proceed with the wedding. They then get married, and with this, the beautiful story comes to an end.